Fun fact about every character in Fire Emblem the Blazing Blade. And just like many of you probably once did, we begin with Lyn's story and the Lady of the Plains herself. As you may know, her current voice actress is Wendy Lee, and she has provided Lyn's voice ever since she's had one really. Heroes, Warriors, Engage, it's all Wendy. And so it isn't really a surprise to see her in the credits for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate as well, seeing as Lyn is an assist trophy in that game. Except the various voice lines Lyn says in this game are recycled from Brawl, where she made her Smash debut and was voiced by Lani Minella instead. Fortunately, Minella probably didn't feel too snubbed, because she is the voice of Lucas and several Koopalings as well, her name's in the credits regardless. Mark was of course the series' first ever avatar, and that fact might be referenced in the Japanese version of Awakening. While we in the West call Robin's child Morgan, their Japanese name is Mark. Yes, even female Morgan. Potentially a reference to the avatar that started it all. Sane is one of the characters with the highest total number of supports in the Blazing Blade, hitting the maximum of 7. He is however unique in that he is, to the surprise of absolutely no one, the only male character in the game who has 6 supports with women and only 1 man. The reverse is also the case for Vaida. She has 6 out of 7 supports with men. Kent most likely derives his name from a character from Shakespeare's play King Lear. Fittingly, the Kent from that tale was a knight who remained loyal to the king no matter what happened. We have seen quite often before that characters name the animals they ride into battle with, but Florina seems to have picked an odd name to say the least. Her Pegasus is called Yui, definitely a male name, yet several times throughout the game it becomes clear her Pegasus is female. This is all the result of translation errors, as in Japanese her Pegasus is male. In a leaked early script of the game, an entire support chain between Will and Heath can still be found. It appears to be complete, so why it was cut is unknown, even if it isn't the most exciting. Dorcas is mentioned by name in the English commercial for the Blazing Blade, which no other character is, so that's quite interesting. The contents of the commercial are also referenced in Heroes, with Dorcas using the line "Trust Nobody", which also appears in this commercial. Sarah has a unique clerk and female priest sprite that differs from other characters in the game. Not only is her robe different, she also doesn't wear a hat, so her hair is quite recognizable as a result. What her escort Urk ends up doing after the war is a little unclear. According to his ending, he refuses the opportunity to follow in Pen's footsteps as Mage General. However, the art book for the Binding Blade mentions Cecilia is Urk's successor as Mage General, implying he did take up the post eventually. And speaking of where characters are in the Binding Blade, it's implied Raph is no longer around, if you get what I mean. His daughter Sue is stated to be the only survivor of her tribe's massacre, implying Raph is no longer alive by the events of the Binding Blade. Bit of a lighter fact for Matthew. He is the only character in the game that winks. This is done in his recruitment conversation with Guy. The unconscious Niels, that appears as a green unit to defend in Chapter 21, Kinship's Bond, is the unit with the highest constitution in the entire game. It's 20 when you first start the chapter, and if you then save and reboot, it actually goes up to 52 for some unexplained reason. When the Blazing Blade first released and Nintendo ran a character popularity poll for fans in Japan, no male character gained more female votes than Lucius. I think it's fair to say that popularity hasn't really stuck, but hey, better to lose love than never loved at all, right? I could use that for a mean segue into Wallace, but I'm better than that. Although I'm still gonna focus on one of his flaws, his poor sense of direction. This is actually referenced in his true recruitment chapters, both of which feature Fog of War. Time to move on to the main game proper now with the 2 remaining lords, starting with Eliwood. He's actually ambidextrous, as when he is a lord he wields his sword in his right hand, but if he then promotes into a knight lord he uses his left. Unique, right? Except Hector does the same thing. With any axe that isn't Armad's, he'll use his right hand, but if he does use the legendary weapon, he switches to his left. And then during critical hit animations, he'll use his right again. 2 ambidextrous lords, what are the chances? Because Marcus reappears in the Binding Blade, his death quote in the Blazing Blade has him simply retreating rather than actually dying. The same thing applies to Barter word for word, but if Barter is paired up with Carla, it is pretty strongly implied that he dies, just like his beloved. This is due to a translation error. This line is not present in the Japanese original. A similar mistake that did appear in the original game, considering this topic, affects Rebecca. She does actually die if she dies in gameplay, which shouldn't be possible because in the Binding Blade her child Wold is playable. It seems the developers just overlooked this connection. And speaking of Wold, even though his father is purposefully kept ambiguous to not make any partner for Rebecca canon, I do think it's noteworthy that her paired ending with Lowen seems to describe Wold down to a T. Father's green hair, mother's personality and talents with a bow seems like a match to me. While her paired endings with Will and Sane also allude to their child, none of them specify as much about him as her ending with Lowen does, so take that as you will. Another interesting paired ending fact comes from Priscilla. Her ending with Guy in the Western version has the two fall in love, but because she is a noble and he is not, they don't pursue their love. In the original Japanese game though, Priscilla actually elopes and the two live happily ever after. Bizarre change if you ask me, no clue why the localizers decided these lovebirds need more heartbreak in their life. He may initially not seem like the guy for it, but it's also possible for Oswin to find love by the end of this journey. His choice of partner is a little worrisome though, let's put it that way. His only possible partner is Sarah, and while it is definitely worded as if they eventually, over time, become a couple, the fact of the matter is that during the game, Sarah is confirmed to be 16 and he is somewhere in his 30s. Let's hope it took a long time before they eventually got together, huh? Despite the fact that Merlinus' whole thing is not being a combat unit, for some reason his official artwork for the Blazing Blade depicts him with a sword on his belt. I guess it's better to be prepared for anything. Just like Sarah before, Guy also has a unique sprite for a swordmaster, although this one is definitely harder to see why. His legs are spread further apart than all other swordmasters for some reason. In that aforementioned poll on the Blazing Blade's official Japanese website, you know, where Lucius did well, Raven actually did even better. In fact, he is the most popular male character that isn't a lord, and even received more votes than Lyn. Again, safe to say that didn't stick. Although Kanas uses dark magic as a shaman, his affinity is actually anima magic, which is a reference to how he yearns for knowledge more than power. Next is a fact that is either gonna be a duh moment if you know it, or blow your mind if you didn't, but it's pretty strongly implied that Dart is actually Rebecca's brother Dan. By the end of their support chains, she's convinced, and the names are even similar both in the Western version as well as in Japanese. This CG image right here might very well be the least seen one in the entire game. It depicts Eliwood and Fiora, a possible couple, but since Ninian and Lyn will probably be the more popular picks, I don't think this is a screen many players even know exists. So here you go, no need to thank me. And speaking of potential partners for Eliwood, Ninian is another and probably the most popular one too. This is further evidenced by a large number of heroes ults, some of which actually allude to their relationship. What most of them have in common though, and what is a bit of an error, is that they all attack using Fire Breath, despite Ninian being an Ice Dragon. Legault is only in his 20s, but has already earned himself quite a reputation as a former Black Fang member and owner of a cool nickname being Hurricane. Thing is though, that title is not unique to him whatsoever. The boss Ubans is also called the Hurricane in the Western version, though in Japanese his nickname is Fierce Eagle. Due to paladins being able to use axes in the Blazing Blade for the last time, Isadora is the only female character in the entire game that has the ability to use the weapon type. We already saw that Heath had a cut support chain with Will, but an arguably even more interesting fact about him that was cut is the fact that he was originally planned to be Vida's brother. Both of them were planned to be nobles of House Valakia of Bern, which doesn't exist in the final game. Just like Rebecca earlier, Hawkeye also actually dies if he falls in battle in the Blazing Blade, despite his daughter Igreen making an appearance in the Binding Blade. However, in his case, this is not necessarily a problem, as it is confirmed through his support with Ninian that Igreen is already born at this time. Another connection to the Binding Blade can be found with Geiss, brother of Geese. To reference this, the duo have nearly identical growth rates, although Geiss's resistance is a tad better, so I guess Geese will be hearing about that until the end of time. For more sibling love, we look at Farina, a character that had her name changed in the Italian version of the Binding Blade to Freya, like the hero's OC. This was done because farina literally means flour in Italian, as in what you make bread with, which of course would have been a little hard to take seriously as a name. Pent has one of the more memorable recruitment chapters in the game. Not only is his titled Living Legend to help sell him even more, he could also just pretty easily walk his entire chapter on his own. But of course, the best thing Pent is known for is his relationship with Louise, something that might be referenced in this chapter. You see, the two bosses, Paul and Jasmine, have ace supports with one another, which only ever happens with Lloyd and Linus in the rest of the game. Their strong bond could perhaps be a nod toward Pent and Louise's relationship. Now, while we're on the topic, in her C support with Heath, Louise is called the horrendous mistranslation of Marchioness Wrigley, rather than the correct term Countess Wrigley. Although Carol has the highest growths in the entire series in the Binding Blade, a serious defense rate being among them, he actually has the weakest defense growth of all units in the Blazing Blade. Which is odd considering he is younger in this game, of course. We're back to translation errors for Nino, who was actually the winner of that Nintendo website Blazing Blade poll I have referred to a few times. In her A support with Kanas, she shows him a picture of her real family and mentions her twin brothers, naming one of them Kai. The reason she doesn't mention the other is because he doesn't exist. In Japanese, she says Kai is her twin brother, meaning that she is one of the twins in the pictures, they're not alongside her. In Jafar's hero's artwork, his two daggers are depicted wildly inconsistent. In his normal and attack art, they're pretty straight, but then in his damaged art, they're suddenly more curved and don't even appear to fit inside his sheaths anymore. Since we've already had quite some facts about Vida all throughout the video, I'm gonna keep it short for her dedicated moment. Her wyvern is named Umbriel. Now you know. When Harkon first joins your army in the chapter Pale Flower of Darkness, he comes equipped with a Brave Sword. This is actually the only Brave Sword you can ever get your hands on in the Binding Blade, so use it wisely. While Carol's nicknames of Sword Saint and Sword Demon are quite well known, I don't think the same applies to Carla's nickname. The Princess of Swords, which actually appears to nowadays have been turned into the Sword Vassal, by Fire Emblem heroes at least. I mentioned the chapter Pale Flower of Darkness just now, which is a chapter that is different depending on how much experience a group of characters has earned. One of those characters factored in is Renault, who hasn't joined your army at this point. Weird little thing, but I guess it does no harm. And finally, as far as playable characters go, we have Aphos. He's the only character in the game that can achieve an S rank in more than one weapon. Hell, he even goes a step further and has S rank in all forms of magic. We may be done with playable characters, but as loyal viewers of this little series will know, I also always try to do my best to find facts for other story relevant characters. Fargus is to this day the only boss in Fire Emblem history who lands you a game over upon being defeated. Even just attempting to fight him is enough to make you start over. In the Japanese script, Nergal specifies that Kishuna is his 252nd morph, a detail that is completely omitted from the Western release. Lloyd and Linus' weapons in the chapter Cog of Destiny were also altered from Japan to the West. In Japan they wield a rune sword, but in the West it's a light brand. Ursula is fought twice in the game, once as boss and once as a morph. Interestingly enough though, despite being 5 levels higher, her morph actually has lower resistance than the living and breathing version. Sonya has some odd differences in design in-game compared to her artwork. Her artwork clearly depicts her with gloves, which her portrait doesn't have, and the shoes in her unique sprite are red, despite those in her artwork being black. The Fire Emblem trading card game known as Fire Emblem Cypher includes all kinds of numbers and attacks and whatever on their cards, as well as a gender symbol. Short-haired for men, long hair for women. But since Lim Stella is genderless, on her only card this symbol was just simply removed. And lastly, although characters' portraits are simply mirrored whenever they appear on the other side of the screen, because Nergal has specifically his left eye obstructed, he is one of the few characters in the entire series to actually have different sets of portraits for this purpose. And that has been all I could find. But if you have any facts for Leela, Uther, Bramamond or more, feel free to share them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all my future Fire Emblem content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.